I'm Dean, I'm the dad.
I'm Laura, I'm the mom.
And I'm Krysta, I'm the daughter.
And together we are Family Plot. Well, that's nice. That's very nice. How is everybody today?
Tired.
That's going around. I had to get some extra sleep myself.
Yeah. Well, having a nighttime holiday in the middle of the week kind of throws you out the bus and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, what to talk about? Let's keep to the usual housekeeping. First and foremost, if you would like more from us, you can check out our Patreon page where we have 3 groups, Team Bunny, Team Podcast, Team Electric Bell. Oh, wait. We're not doing it that way anymore.
Yeah, we're not doing it that way anymore. Now it's...
Yeah, Team Bunny.
Team Podcast.
Team Electric Bell.
There we go. That you can join, but it really doesn't matter because it all goes to feed the bunny and pay the electric bill. But it's a monthly donation. It's like 1, 3, 5, or 10 of the levels. You could also go to Buy Me a Coffee and do a one-time donation. If you can't do that, that's fine too. We've never hated on people for not having money, especially in this economy.
Absolutely.
If you enjoy the show, share it on social media. If not, keep it to yourself. See?
You can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
That's right, Thumper. All right. So today we set our borrowed Wayback Machine.
I thought kindergarten rules was you get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
There are multiple.
And crisscross applesauce spoons in the bowl.
Yeah, Lexi will say that to me and it's just creepy.
There are multiple kindergarten rules.
Oh, okay. It's been a while since I've been in kindergarten, so forgive me for forgetting.
So today we set our borrowed Wayback Machine to June 9th, 1912, where person or persons unknown bludgeoned the Moore family and their 2 guests to death. Each decedent was found with an axe wound to their head. This horrific, bloody crime caught the attention of the nation at the time, and to this day, it remains unsolved. We discuss the family, the murder, the discovery, the investigation, and the paranormal events that have taken place in the home in this historical true crime episode of the Family Plot Podcast.
This one's going to be rough for me.
What, you don't like Villisca, Iowa?
No, I just think it's going to be hard to talk about all these babies. Anyway. So, before we get into that, though, before we dive into the deep, dark chasm that is historical, true, unsolved crime, hey, that was kind of snazzy and catchy. But before that, it's time for Krysta's Corner.
Yep.
It's not just any corner, it's Krysta's Corner.
She sounds excited to be here.
Yes, she does.
As the giant lion yawn of our Krysta echoes throughout our ears. Krysta, what's going on in your corner this week?
You know,
In the corner, Krysta's Corner.
I am pretty sure that is so not able to be shared. I'm pretty sure that is like license of the licensing guru behind hole.
Probably true.
let's not do that. I haven't really thought about what I was going to talk about.
What are there any more video games that you're playing? Ooh, or what about the Five Nights at Freddy's movie? Are you looking forward to that?
I'm looking forward to that.
Because it looks
it
kind of...
comes out October 27th. I really want to watch it. The trailer looks really cool, and it better look cool. It's a movie that was going to be made 2019. That was working in the makes, like, 2019.
What I really enjoy about the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and we haven't really talked about it too much, is that it is a franchise that we were around as it got started, right? Because at the time when Five Nights originally came out, I was working as an admin for a Minecraft server, and we had a lot of interaction with different YouTubers, and we were really kind of involved with a lot of different people who were doing Let's Play videos on YouTube. So we were among some very lucky people who were kind of front and center as all of the lore and the stories and everything kind of snowballed in conjunction with Five Nights at Freddy's. So I think it's so interesting, and I was telling your dad this the other day, that Five Nights at Freddy's is really, it's, the way I look at it, it's really a story that the internet has come up with capability.
Honestly, yeah. It's like, it's a whole story made by the internet, by context clues of Scott.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what Scott just threw out this jump scare game, and the internet just sunk its teeth into it and turned all of this into this freaky lore and backstory, and just took it and ran with all the imagination and all the clues, and it's just kind of grown kind of a life of its own from that.
It really changed the perspective of horror games now, because, like, yes, it, like, does not have a bunch of background lore, but, like, the internet has made it so clear that they wanted to find some sort of background to this, because would not just be random jump scaring animatronics, right? So they found context clues, they found what they thought was actually going on. They put that out for everyone else to be like, yep, I saw this.
And it's just snowballed and grown from there. So I think that is really cool.
I don't know. See, it's the one thing that everybody did that I just like, really? This is a thing? This, like, there's no point overall. There's no point.
I don't know.
You know, I mean, Resident Evil, you're fighting Umbrella. Sorry. Oh.
Failed. Guess we see where you went, Daddy.
But, you know, Resident Evil, you're fighting the Umbrella Corporation. Silent Hill, you know, you're in this town that has become infested with multiple evil entities. You know, because the humans that live there were such poops. You know, Five Nights at Freddy's was scary jump scare. And nothing. Like, it doesn't eat you, it doesn't kill you, it doesn't...
Well, it kind of...
yeah, Dad, you realize in the death scene, in the first game, you see yourself in the back room stuffed into a Freddy suit, right? You're dead! I'm going to...
She's gonna pop you one, Dad.
I understand, but it never, it just doesn't feel the same. I don't know. I'm not saying it, I'm just saying why I didn't like it. Not that you shouldn't.
Fair enough. Yes.
You're allowed to like anything you want. You are, as long as it's safe for you, you know. Maybe not meth or something, but short of that. But, yeah.
Definitely not that.
Yeah. You could like Britney Spears if you wanted to. I'd wonder why, but you're allowed.
What else you got for us in your corner, Krysta? What's up?
I mean, I just finished a Dynamask. Or, now it's not a Dynamask anymore.
I was going to say...
It has to do with one of our episodes when we were talking about a foxfish and I said that I wanted to make a koi fox, or a Koi Kitsune.
Beautiful.
It's very pretty. I just...
Maybe we should take some pictures and put it up on our Facebook group.
Yeah, she needs eyes and to be furred, but besides that, she's good.
So the JH Mott episode with the fox fish lady inspired you to do your own persona of that.
Furries can get really weird ideas.
No, Krysta, I'm not complaining. When I was your age, it was instead I would have created a champion's character or something. It was the same kind of deal.
Yep. All good.
Yeah, no one's going, that darn Krysta, she's messing up.
Nope.
And I see you've got a friend this episode.
I've got a friend this episode that transferred mid-episode.
Because my cat has taken a seat up on your leg to clean himself. And he's sort of holding your hand like, don't move. I'm comfortable.
He is. Yeah, he is comfortable. He looks like he is really enjoying hanging out on Krysta, taking his bath.
Yeah, Noelle's not going to be happy about this.
He does not look concerned about that.
Nope, does not look concerned about whether or not Noelle is happy about it at all.
You going to transfer back to Dad?
Just trying to figure out where to go with all of the cords.
Bro. Mike, just stay.
Well, Krysta, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about this week?
God, we're such awful company. We're putting her to sleep.
No, she was asleep before she came out.
I was asleep before. No, I don't really have much else to say. I'm sorry. I'm being kind of boring today.
Absolutely fine. I appreciate you sharing as much as you did. It was nice having a chat with you about Five Nights at Freddy's.
You know what wasn't nice? Ow.
The cat scratching you?
That too.
So, one of our listeners, Hilda Grimm, I want to say, which would be Sheila's daughter. Sheila did an episode with us. One of Sheila's daughters. She has a few. But she pointed out something that I had forgotten. I think we've covered the Sally House on this show.
I think we have.
But the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Is located on 208.
You said Atchison, Kansas. I was like, yeah.
East Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Villisca house that we're going to be talking about is located on 208 South Street in Villisca, Iowa.
Interesting. Interesting coincidence.
Yeah, so I'm not sure Krysta likes that. Just her head moved in a way like you would if you were trying to duck something you didn't want any part of. So, before we get too far into this, we need... Yes. Thank you, Krysta, for another awesome episode of Krysta's Corner.
Yeah,
thank you.
Cool beans.
Okay, so let's meet the people who inhabit 208 South Street or whatever, the Villisca Axe House. Wasn't called that when they lived there. Let's make that clear.
Ow.
The Moores consisted of Josiah Joe, everybody called him Joe, B. Moore, who was 43. He was big in the hardware industry. He owned a large store, but he also delivered parts to local farmers who needed them.
Cool.
Then there is his wife, Sarah Moore. Also, she was born Sarah Montgomery. She was 39. She did several programs for the local Presbyterian church, including coordinating the Children's Day program being held that night. The Moores also consisted of Herman Montgomery, who was 11, Mary Catherine, who was 10, Arthur Boyd, who was 7, and Paul Vernon, who was 5. On June 9th, they were going to the Children's Day program, and accompanying them were the children of Joe Stillinger, a local farmer. His daughters Ina May was 8, and Lena Gertrude was 12. They decided to spend the night at the Moore's house, giving them the chance to attend church services, which Joe himself was loath to do, which is kind of an odd thing for the time, because that was the primary social outlet, was church.
Yeah.
Joe Stillinger didn't want to go to church, but he didn't mind his children going with the Moores, who were well-to-do and well-liked by the town.
Sure.
Now, we do not know much about when and how the Children's Day program went. We do know the Stillingers and Moores had spent a large portion of the day at the church, not leaving until after the program concluded around 9:30 p.m. From there, they walked to the Moores' home, arriving around 9:45 to 10 p.m.
So not a far walk.
No, not a far walk at all from the church to their home.
Yeah, 15 minutes is a pretty short walk. So next we talk about the discovery. So the next morning, June 10th, around 7 a.m., one of the Moore's neighbors, Mary Peckham, became concerned because none of the Moores were out doing their chores, thinking that they might...
Nosy busybody. Nosy busybody. Sorry, had to cough.
Gotcha. Thinking that they might have overslept because of the church service the night before, Mary let the chickens out into their yard and knocked on the door but got no answer. Then she went to get Joe's brother, Ross Moore. Like Peckham, Ross knocked on the door, then pounded on it, then shouted for his brother. After receiving no response, he got out his copy of the house key and unlocked the door. While Peckham waited on the porch, Ross went into the parlor and opened the guest bedroom door, where he discovered Ina and Lena Stillinger bludgeoned to death on the bed. He yelled to Peckham to get Hank Horton, the town's main peace officer. Hank searched the house to discover that all the Moores had been bludgeoned to death, as had the Stillinger girls. He discovered the murder weapon, an axe belonging to Josiah, laying next to the bodies of the Stillinger girls. It seemed Sarah had been struck with the blade of the axe. All the others had been bludgeoned with the dull end. All the victims had been killed in their sleep, with the possible exception of Ina, who was crossways on the bed, had a defensive wound on one arm, and was found with her night dress pulled up with no pants. Okay, first off, somebody's a freaking monster. Wow. I can't. That's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's... Oh, go ahead.
It's awful that, to think that somebody in humanity does this. Like, lots of people have, or not lots, but there are multiple people who have literally killed
Yeah.
Multiple people.
And some of those completely innocent children. Yeah. Okay, before we get into the investigation, it should be noted that Hank Horton, the town's main peace officer, did a short initial investigation and then told the large crowd assembled outside that they should not, under any circumstances, enter the house. Because remember, this is a time with not a lot to do. I mean, the day before, a Sunday, most people spent the day at church because of the children's program, because there wasn't a pool or, HBO Max or anything else for the kids to do.
Right.
So when Hank announced to the assemblage that they shouldn't in any circumstances enter the house, Of course, dozens of people waited until Hank Horton was out of sight to enter the house and see the murders, even grabbing souvenirs from the crime scene.
Wow.
So much of what comes next is subjective and guesswork. After the killer committed the crime, he covered all the faces of his victim with cloth or clothes. He also covered the windows with cloth, as well as all the mirrors in the house. Further, at some point, he got 4 pounds of bacon out of the icebox, and I use the term icebox very specifically because that is where it had been kept. An icebox was like a very early refrigerator that you filled with ice. That's what kept it cold. It did not plug in, so you would just swap out the ice from time to time. And set it next to the axe, which, as you'll remember, was found on the Stillingers on the guest bed. They found a bowl full of water that had some blood in it and some uneaten food. Like the person who'd done the killings had made a plate of food that they then did not touch. Doctors put the time of the victim's death between midnight and 5 a.m. An impression in the hay in the barn led police to assume the killer had at some point taken refuge there, possibly the day before, where he was able to observe the comings and goings of those in the house through a hole in the wall. According to some sources, 2 cigarette butts were found upstairs in the attic, leaving some to surmise that the killer had hid there until the attack. However, it could just as easily have been one of the looky-loos who had smoked in the attic. We just don't know, because Hank's initial investigation doesn't say anything about it, and then suddenly they're there. So it's one of those details, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We don't know. And now it is believed he started with Joe and Sarah on the 3rd floor, striking them so hard he actually gouged the ceiling with the axe on the back swing. He then went to the 2nd floor where he murdered the Moore's 3 children in the same manner. He then returned upstairs to the master bedroom where he struck Sarah and Josiah some more, in the process knocking over a shoe that had filled with blood. He then went back downstairs, killing the Stillinger children, and made his strange after-murder preparations before leaving altogether. Because the Moore home was within walking distance of the train yard, some felt the killer could have come on the train. Because Ina's dress was found to be raised above her pelvic area, some felt the killer may have sexually assaulted her, or at least attempted to. However, this was later proven to be false. So that's the scene that all of these people went and looked at. And Joe Stillinger, when he was told about it, everybody noted how he collapsed and sobbed and started beating the ground.
Well, yeah, those were his babies.
So, yeah, I mean, so let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors, and then Laura, you're going to cover some of the suspects.
Yeah, the dirty, possibly guilty fools.
Okay, well, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors.
All right. Hey, honey.
Yes, dear.
I feel sponsored, but I also feel daggers coming from our daughter's eyes at you.
Yes, I noticed. I don't know why.
It was a little sharp and pointy and...
Yeah, I don't know why. Why was there daggers being pointed at your father, Krysta?
Don't you dare.
I would never do such a thing. How dare you?
Okay, well, I'm going to leave these two alone because I'm used to this fight. And we are going to talk about the suspects. So, to start off with, Frank Jones was probably the most unlikely suspect on the list. Some years before, Josiah Moore had worked for Frank, and then when Joe left to start his own company, a lucrative John Deere contract went with him. Frank had been a state senator at one point and was a powerful figure in town. Detective Wilkerson from the Buns Detective Agency in Kansas City.
I think that's Burns Detective Agency.
Burns? Yeah, the Burns Detective Agency in Kansas City. Sorry about that. Suspected Jones and even accused him of the crime. No formal charges were ever brought against him, however. William Blackie Mansfield, another target of Wilkerson's, he believed Jones actually hired William to kill the Moores. Mansfield was a serial killer who killed his wife, child, and in-laws and was suspected of other killings. In fact, a killing similar to the Villisca Murders occurred in Paola, Kansas 4 days earlier. However, Wilkerson could never prove it, and Mansfield eventually sued Wilkerson and was awarded $2,225.
Which in the early 1900s was
quite a bit of money.
Yeah, it was a fortune.
I mean, it's a lot of money now. It's definitely back in 1915 or whenever, it was definitely a lot more than it is now. Henry Lee Moore, no relation to the Villisca Moores. Henry was convicted of the murder of his mother and grandmother a few months after the Villisca killings. The 22 other axe murders across the country. The federal agent not only concluded that Henry Lee was guilty of the Villisca killings, but 22 other axe murders across the country. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of axe murdering. Still, Henry Lee Moore was never charged with any of these killings. Andy Sawyer, in the wake of the brutal killings, suspicion was cast upon transients and strangers who might have been passing through the town at the time. One such individual was Andy Sawyer, who was reported to the sheriff by his employer because Sawyer was apparently very interested in the Villisca murders and is said to have slept fully dressed while gripping the axe that he used as a worker on the Burlington Railroad. Though the town sheriff detained Sawyer, he was dismissed as a suspect when it came to light that he'd been arrested for vagrancy in Osceola, Iowa on the night of the murders. Reverend George Kelly, wow, the almost literal definition of odd duck. George Kelly was a traveling reverend who was obsessed with the Villisca slayings to the point of writing letters to the police and surviving family members for any information about the murders. Kelly had been arrested for sending obscene images through the mail and had once been held in a mental institution in Washington, D.C. So, in 1917, he was arrested and questioned for hours. He eventually confessed, but recanted almost immediately. His first trial ended in a hung jury, and his second ended in acquittal. Finally, an unnamed serial killer. There are many who believe the killings are the work of a serial killer, one who rode the train, killed families with whatever weapons he found in the home, and even took out food and covered mirrors. While this is a more modern interpretation, Henry Lee Moore is proof that this is not a new theory, and the fact that those who champion it cannot agree on which murders are connected makes it an unlikely possibility as well.
So yeah, that's and we're not the first podcast to cover Villisca. Lots of them have.
Oh, of course.
And I know when, and that's why we did it. They were able to find a couple of murders that had very similar MOs. And these murders weren't killed by any of the suspects, weren't committed by any of the suspects we have. I know that, for example, Hillbilly Horror Stories with Jerry and, what's his wife's name? I will never forgive myself if I don't remember her name. It's not Faye. But it's a country name like that. Tammy, no.
Jerry and, gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I feel like a bad person, so I'm sorry.
We are. We're terrible.
But they did an episode in Villisca and were able to connect it to, I want to say, 22 different axe murders. And while he was kind of tongue-in-cheek about it when he presented it, I like one of the murders that took place around this time was the Axeman slayings in New Orleans, where I don't think that those connect at all, just because that guy had his own axe. He wasn't taking murder weapons that he found at the scene. Although that does sort of like
Jerry and Tracy.
Tracy, thank you. Sorry, Tracy.
I was going to look it up, and I'm like, no, Tracy, I know her name. What's wrong with me?
So, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, and there might be some truth to that. There's a handful of those that were listed that did have a lot of this similar MO.
Sure.
And it could very well, I mean, riding, like, trains was a common thing back then.
Right.
That's when that song, Big Rock Candy Mountain, got written. And that was about hobos who rode the train and this magical land they were all hoping to find. So I don't think that the list of suspects contains anybody on that list who was the actual killer, except for the possible unnamed serial killer. But I really don't think that he had a long reign or a long list of crimes to his name, just because that MO is so specific.
Right.
You know, and what is going through your head when you're covering mirrors with cloth? Right. Why get out the food that you don't eat? Why? Yeah, okay, washing your hands off the blood, I can see that, but like, they didn't have sinks back then. They would fill a bowl with water and you'd wash in that. So, I don't know. It's just, it's real odd, and I don't know. Now, as one can easily imagine, murders this gruesome have left behind a residue of hauntings. People have reported children's voices, the sound of children crying, shadowy figures with an axe that appear at the end of the bed, which, once that happens, I'm out, done, bye. Doors that open and close on their own, closets that throw out clothes, multiple EVPs have been heard in the home, and ghosts have even called in these EVPs for specific investigators. Strange warnings have also been heard whispering from the shadows. So it's like whoever was there is still there, and they don't have even a good sense of time. Like, they know the murderer's there and they're trying to warn people, but it's years and years too late. So yeah, it's definitely a creepy place. They do ghost hunts a fair amount there. So they're basically fairly cheap. Definitely, if we wind up in this corner of Iowa, I would visit the place. But going on to the summary, the final thoughts, for me, it's just that it's a horrible crime. It's absolutely horrible. And if I were investigating it, I would look at Sarah maybe, because she's the only one he struck with the blade of the axe. But even so, I don't know if that was intentional, because when he was swinging the axe, he was doing it so violently, he was hitting the ceiling. Yeah. So maybe he did have the butt of the axe he was using, but it caught on the ceiling and got spun around. It's hard to see what would be an important detail in that environment. Right. And then on top of it, we don't even know what might have been there initially to what was there after everybody tromped through and grabbed souvenirs. And I get that there wasn't anything to do, but it seems silly to me to think, well, they'll be able to solve it after I remove this or that.
I don't think people thought about it like that.
Here's my thing. You never know with murder cases like these. Like, when you don't know who the person was who murdered all of these people, it's really hard to tell what their intentions were and what their intentions were not, unless you look really hard at the crime scene and would have almost would have known everything behind the brain of the serial killer, or just the killer by itself, because maybe she was struggling when he was trying to hit her with the axe, so he had to flip it around and smack her head off or something.
Yeah, it's hard to say, especially, like I said, we don't have a crime scene. We have essentially a museum that had visits going on while they were trying to conduct their murder investigation. And if you press me, I'm going to tell you I buy it was somebody who got off a train, killed the family for reasons entirely in their own head, and then got back on a train. And I'm not talking about a passenger train either.
Right.
I'm talking about someone jumping in a boxcar.
Sure.
Like Boxcar Willie, but with an axe and not a banjo or whatever it was he played. But if you push me, that's where I'm going to land, but not by a lot.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just horrible. It's just horrible that someone would, even if you were going to, kill the parents, why murder all of these children? So many children.
Yeah.
I mean, were they all in the house?
Yeah.
But
why witnesses?
But it's clear
they were sleeping. They were all sleeping. The only one that was possibly not sleeping was the little Ina girl, and they think that they were the last ones that they killed. So,
like I said, you never really know what's going on behind the killer's mind.
It's so hard to get. So just nauseating. Just terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and I get the fact that she wasn't wearing panties, but maybe she didn't bring panties and so didn't wear any to bed. She had a night dress and thought that was enough.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if that was more common or less common at the time, but I know our girls have done it. Some of our boys have done it, so. Yeah. So I don't know how common or uncommon that was, but I get why they initially thought that she may have been sexually assaulted, but no.
I'm very glad that she wasn't.
As am I. It was disgusting enough without that.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's what also makes me think that it may have been a homeless person, because I'm willing to bet that homeless people varied as much then as they do now, and this could have been someone with some sort of mental illness.
That is definitely a possibility. You are not wrong, sir.
So, Krysta, your final thoughts? Do you have any guesses about who the killer was, or do you think it was any of the people they actually suspected?
No.
Well, that's a thought.
It's possible that maybe one of them were the killers, but honestly, Why would they be the killers?
Yeah.
There are so many other people who could have been the killers.
Right. And like Frank Jones, I get why people think he's the least likely. Yeah, he may have been upset that Josiah took off and took one of his big contracts with him, but it had been years since that happened.
Right.
And, okay, I get... if you're a big, evil, kind of businessman, I get maybe wanting to kill Josiah, but I don't get wiping out his family.
Right.
Because you wipe out Josiah, especially in 1912, it's not like the family is going to take over the business or anything.
Right.
And then you can look like the hero by like, well, I'll run the business and pay you a dividend if you want, you know? And I mean, to them, he's just the former employer. So that doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, the whole thing just really doesn't make
You
a lot of
know,
sense.
some, like, killings that, happened, and we don't know who the killer was, rather because of the time, or just because they were very sneaky. A lot of them are confusing if you don't know what happened and you don't know what was going through their brain at the time.
Right, yeah. I mean, it just, I don't know. I guess I don't buy anybody on the official list as a killer, much the same way as I don't buy anyone on the official list as Jack the Ripper. I don't. You, hun, you have any?
I just find the whole thing just absolutely disgusting.
I was just going to say, do you have any favorite suspects here? Ones you think might have done it, or do you think it was a stranger?
I think it probably was a stranger. I mean, it's the kind of thing, especially in 1912, that it's just really hard to imagine.
Yeah, the best I've got, I have a suspect, but I don't have a reason to have him as a suspect. And my suspect is Ross.
Ross?
His brother.
Oh. Well, that makes as much sense as anything.
He had a key, so he could get in unnoticed.
Mm-hmm.
He would be able to maneuver in the dark because he's been there.
Mm-hmm.
And so would be able to find all these rooms. But then the question would become why. Certainly, if he knew all these rooms, he could have left the Stillingers alone.
Yeah.
It's unlikely he would have had a grudge against them.
Right.
So, in the end, even that falls short for me.
Yep.
But, and I don't know how much they interviewed or looked into him when he was alive either. We don't have Henry Horton's notes. Everybody called him Hank, but his name was Henry. Common thing. It's common.
Sure.
So, yeah, I just, I don't know. And I hate to leave it there, but that's where it is. I don't know.
Yep, and that's kind of where we leave off with it. Right.
So that's all we have this evening. Thanks as always for listening. Thanks to Bill Barrett, who does our theme music. Thanks, Bill. And if you need music for a project, or you need someone to play music for a wedding or some other public event, Bill's your guy. You can reach him at Bill Barrett, BEHRENDT, at sbcglobal.net. Also, thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie True Crime. If you're looking for a true crime podcast, Paige is definitely your go-to with the Reverie True Crime, Reverie Crime Pod. Very, very good. But she also has a Canva addiction, so she, along with our Krysta, got together and did our logo art. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Thanks to Aaron Gnurk of the Big Dumb Fun Show, who continues to promote us locally. Thanks to Good Pods, we wound up, the last week's episode wound up on the Good Pods Top 100, so people apparently liked our Japanese holdout episode.
Very nice.
Also, if you'd like to discuss the show with us, you can join our Facebook group, Family Plot Facebook group. Also, our Facebook group is a great place to suggest topics for us. Now, join us next week as we go full paranormal, as we look into Kansas State University, the Hutchinson Public Library, and the Beaumont Hotel.
Ooh, spooky.
And local.
Very nice.
Bye.
Bye.